Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Nerds with Friends. My name is Cody Leach. As always, I'm joined by Christian Garcia.
Hello.
And we have a very special guest, as our video podcast watchers can tell already. John Jackson Miller, author of the new book. Hopefully, it's out now or it's about to be out, depending on when we release this. Batman Resurrection. Exciting new book.
That's right.
His version looks way cooler than ours.
Well,
Ours is like
yeah,
a white border.
what you have there is a advanced reader copy, which they don't really do anymore. But we're trying to go retro for
I love it.
this book.
I
So
mean, it
this
fits
is
with the theme, I think, for
sort
sure.
of thing that yes, in '89, this is what we would have done.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're all about it. I told Christian it's like a collector's item now, so we're very
Well, it
excited.
actually is.
Very cool. We're going to talk a lot about Batman today, obviously, but before we do that, make sure you guys do all the podcast things, like, subscribe, comment, let us know your favorite Batman villain down in the comments. I think that'd be a fun one to throw in there today. And we like to start the show off with a little section called Nerdy Confessions, where we confess the things that make us nerds. Christian, why don't you start us off?
So my new confession is I started because I'm going to say read, but I've been reading the audiobooks of Lord of the Rings, and I haven't gone through it in a very long time. And like, I don't remember it being so slow in the beginning.
Yeah.
But as soon as it starts picking up in action, I was like, oh, there it is. This is the parts that I fell in love with. And then I finished The Hobbit. I was like, oh, this is very. I was like, I don't know. When the first time I did The Hobbit, I'd read it and I had loved it.
Yeah.
And then this time, but I was like a kid when I'd read it. But this time I was like, oh, I don't remember it being such a kid's book. Like it's
very much so.
Definitely a kid's book. And I was like, it seems so action packed to me.
Well, you were a little kid.
Yeah, I guess so, right?
Little kids find different things fun,
And I was like, I forgot how many songs. Like, I think I might have just skipped the songs. I think I might have just passed the song.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's awesome. I just got to the part where they're in Khazad-dûm. I'm like, here we go. Like this is
there we go.
All the awesome stuff that starts happening.
Absolutely. That's so cool. Yeah, I've been meaning to reread the trilogy. I'm on The Hobbit right now. It's one of the 40 books I'm reading this year, it is very, very kids story, but it's fun too.
And I started watching Peter Jackson's The Hobbit, and I was just like, you know what, like this movie, like it got a lot of heat, and I remember not like they had shot it was in like 4K, and it was like new.
Oh yeah, the high frame rate.
Yeah, and like everything, like you can see things were props, and like it just totally pulls you out of the movie. But just rewatching it at home, I was like, oh man, like this is good. Like I like it definitely. I don't know. I feel like it's aged better.
Yeah, still Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
fun. All right. Well, my nerdy confession. I try to pick things that are book related when we have an author on, but I couldn't do it this week because I've been absorbed in the world of 3D printing again. And I had a 3D printer for a long. I still have it. It's in the other room, but I got into it very early on, and then it kind of lost its luster a little bit for me because the quality wasn't quite what I wanted, and it wasn't really there. But let me tell you, things have changed in the past 2-3 years. And so I've been printing up a storm, miniatures, little statues, things for painting miniatures. I'm very big into Warhammer and things like that in that capacity, and then Dungeons and Dragons miniatures. And so some of these things I've been printing out have been really impressive. So I have this little statue here, this bust that I'm going to paint up. It's hard to tell from the fuzzy zoom pictures, but it is very crispy, and it took 5 hours or something, which sucks, but it definitely is a very sharp picture quality. So I'm just sitting here in my hobby room, just surrounded by fumes from resin and stuff, and it's fun time. John, how about you? What's a nerdy confession for you? I
don't know if I can actually say it's anything I'm embarrassed by because it got me a job.
Yeah.
But apropos to what we're talking about, I saw the 1989 Batman in the theater 12 times.
Whoa.
And not only did I see it 12 times, but I kept the ticket stubs.
Yeah,
that's
cool.
Yeah, there's from the Dollar Theater. So
That's
that's
awesome.
not it was the Dollar Theater was just the second run house. I think these were like 450 a piece was is what it was
Back in the good
back
old
then.
days.
But yeah, it's something where I was very much immersed in it. I have the Taco Bell cup. Um,
Yes.
it says something about that film that when it came out, even though there's this huge push for it, the only fast food licensee they could get was Taco Bell.
Right.
And so by the time of the next one, it's all McDonald's and Happy
Yeah,
Meals and
exactly.
everything else.
I remember the
McDonald's
McDonald's
wanted to,
glass cups,
Yeah,
yeah,
oh yeah,
yeah, for
and of
like,
course that ends up, the McDonald's ends up leading to the undoing of sort of the Burton
right,
series of movies. But that's another longer story.
of
But yeah,
course.
I was certainly very much into it. My friend back here, the standee, I had this I had one of these in the office that I kept in the newsroom at my college newspaper, and I was the editor of the paper. And yeah, I decided, well, okay, I'll show my fandom and I'll bring this guy along with me. And of course, all the members of my staff decided, hey, this is a great time to go to the office supply cabinet and get all the rubber bands and snap them at me, claiming that they were firing at Batman. But that's okay. He took it, and I guess I did too.
That's
But
awesome.
anyways, yeah. So that was a summer. It was a strange summer. It was 35 years ago. I was in a college town. If summer session, there wasn't anything else to do. And
Yeah.
when I was offered the book, it was in part because my editor, Tom Holler, who is also my editor on my most recent Star Wars novel, The Living Force, he was like, "Yeah, I'm offering to this to you. You saw the movie 12 times, didn't
Yeah.
you?"
You're somewhat familiar with the source material.
Yeah, I kind of have memorized the scripts and memorized everything else. And I've even got the I've got still got the review I wrote in the college
Oh, that's
paper.
so cool.
Yeah, and actually some of the questions I had in that review are ones that inspired moments in the book.
That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about, for anyone who's unaware of this book currently, this takes place after Batman 1989, as it's kind
Yeah,
of known now. The one with Jack Nicholson's Joker
yeah.
and Michael Keaton's Batman. And is it Kim Basinger
Kim
was
Basinger, yeah,
yeah. She was Vicky Vale. And this takes place in between this and Batman Returns. And
that's right.
it's its own story,
That's
but
right.
it's kind of living in that Burton universe, and kind of telling another story with another villain, which we'll talk a little bit more
Yeah,
plot details in a second. We won't do any major spoilers or anything,
right.
but since you've seen the movie, you saw the movie 12 times in theaters,
Not counting
obviously,
the VHS.
yeah, exactly. Obviously, something about that movie really like grabbed you. What was it about
Okay.
this iteration of Batman? Because you have a long history with even
Yeah,
comic books and whatnot too, right?
yeah. Well, I've worked in the comics industry for about 30 years. But when I started, as a fan, what I knew of Batman came from the 1966 TV
Oh,
series.
sure.
And then there were cartoons on that were more serious on CBS at that time in the 70s, but otherwise everybody pretty much remembered that. And so in the public eye, in the public consciousness, it really was that campy version of Batman in the 1960s that is what people associated with comics.
Right.
And this was not necessarily the best thing. Now I have to say that I have mellowed a lot in terms of the original series in '66. I understand what was going on, what they captured, the zeitgeist of
Yeah.
of the '60s that were happening then, and also the way the comics kind of were as well. But the thing is, by the time I'm a heavy comics reader in high school and you know, heading there into college, you know, we've reached the direct market era of the comics business. This is where the comic shops are doing most of the sales and not newsstands.
Sure.
We're no longer constrained by the comics code. We can tell more serious stories. Batman has been reinvented by Frank Miller and reimagined by Alan
Yeah.
Moore and reimagined other times, but also other characters as well. And we've had, you know, much more serious themes and stories and that sort of thing. And the problem was that the public, general public, the civilian perception of comics was still trapped
Yeah.
back in the 60s. Now, at least it wasn't trapped back in the 50s where they thought comics caused juvenile delinquency,
Yeah. Sure.
which is what caused the comics code to begin with.
Right.
But you know, it was something where at a certain point you were embarrassed to actually, you know, as a teenager, I stopped buying comics at 7-Eleven because they'd make fun of you.
Right.
And it's like, aren't you a little old for this or whatever? And that's when we all discovered the comic shop, and that was the end of the newsstand.
Right. The safe place where we could
Exactly,
bask in the comics.
and you know, there had been a couple of moments where, you know, things could have changed in the general understanding of comics. You know, Marvel had some TV series in the 70s that, you know, were low budget, didn't look like anything. The only one that succeeded was the Hulk, which was the one that looked the least like it actually,
For sure.
you know, was. And you know, you get a couple of good Superman movies, but you know, it's not something that is going to kick off a sustainable interest in superheroes or more serious stories, because that's not what those films were really about.
Right.
And by the time we get to Batman '89, the most recent superhero movie we've got is Superman 4: The Quest for Peace, which if you have not seen, I will save you the trouble.
Yeah. Those later Superman movies got rough.
Well, that one in particular, you know, there's no money in it, and you know, it's not. It doesn't do anything to advance the narrative of what's going on
Sure.
in comic books. And so what happens is by '89, when the movie is getting ready to come out, first of all, it was a long struggle to get the movie made to begin with. Michael Uslan, who is the executive producer, he had gotten the rights to Batman films in the early '80s, just basically you know, kept trying to get a Batman movie out that would be something that people would be proud of. And you know, what ends up happening is we get you know, these words coming out beforehand. Oh, it's going to be Tim Burton, and all people remember of Tim Burton is Pee Wee Herman, his movie, and then Beetlejuice, I think, might have just been out. So people are starting to get concerned about that.
Yeah.
And then also people were upset with Michael Keaton as well being cast.
I was actually going to ask you that, like how you.
Yeah, I was not concerned, but that was the fear. The fear was
Sure.
He's not going to do a serious movie. He's going to do it like Pee-wee's Big Adventure or something like that, where it was just a farce. It was silly, and so it was something where in the magazine that I was reading every week, Comics Buyer's Guide, which was the weekly newspaper for the business, you know, that was the definite you know, concern in the letters that were coming in that this is how it's going to be. But then what happens is, you know, the PR machine starts ramping up. It turns out to be the most successful public relations campaign in the history of film, before or after.
Wow.
In the sense that it causes people to wear this emblem without any other words. I saw somebody in a parking lot today wearing it, you know, and you know, people were, you know, shaving it into their bodies, tattooing it, everything else. You know, you know, we get the first trailer, which has you know, the Batmobile firing its machine guns, and they don't even show the name of the movie, just the symbol.
Just the symbol.
The posters, the teasers, just the symbol. And people are like, okay, wow, this is going to be something different. We get into the summer, the commercials coming out beforehand. Have Jack Nicholson featured there, laughing like a maniac, and we're just like, oh, okay, what is this going to be? This is not something anybody was expecting. And then, as I said, I was the editor, or I was editing the campus newspaper. There was nothing to do there during the summer because we were only publishing twice a week. And I assigned myself to go write the review of the movie. I went with sincere trepidation,
Yeah.
and when I got in there, it was something I had never seen before. And this is I went to Star Wars when it came out. I was there opening day for Return of the Jedi. Um, I never saw costumers at
Yeah.
a movie opening. I never saw costumers. There were people at that. It was the Thursday night sneak preview, late night, and we had people in Joker makeup. We had people, brought their own giant black bed sheet and sucked their heads through it, so it was like a huge cape. And it's a carnival. And again, the sound comes up with the opening, the music, the Danny Elfman,
Yeah.
the symbol that we're tracking along, every name that comes on the screen, Danny Elfman, Prince, Michael Keaton, Robert Wool, everybody, all these names. It's just cheers and cheers. And then we get to the opening scene, and everybody is just like, wow, because
Yeah.
now we're in Anton Furst's version of Gotham City, which is like nothing anybody has
Oh
ever
yeah.
seen. It's not a real city.
Right.
It's not a real city, but they
It's not
made
Chicago like in
yeah,
in the newer
exactly. That,
ones.
but they on the soundstage they made it one, and they made it
Right.
real, and they did it straight. That is like, I think it's in the first paragraph of my review. They did something amazing. They did it straight. They did it for real.
Yeah.
We get to the end of that picture, and I mentioned this in the acknowledgments of the book, where I have sort of my notes there. I said that by the time you get to the end and the music is rising and you're seeing this, the camera tracking up the building to where Batman is, looking upon the bat signal, in triumph. Um, well, first of all, everybody in the theater went berserk, and at the same time, I was possessed of one thought. And again, I use that phrase in the book, in the end, that the movie had just redeemed comics in the pop culture, in the
Yeah.
public consciousness. It didn't just bring Batman away from 1966. It brought everything back,
Yeah.
and it made possible different interpretations of superheroes. I think the first movie that I can really say gets impacted by it is Darkman, which is not even really a real superhero movie, but it's
Right.
Liam Neeson basically, and you want to think about it, a Clayface kind of a character.
Sure.
If you've ever seen that film, very dark, very violent. We get a spate there of comic book movies that are done straight, like The Rocketeer, where
Yeah.
all the money is in, there's all this money making it look like the 40s.
Right.
You've got the marketing with the symbol happening other places. The Dick Tracy movie just had a big Dick Tracy face symbol
Yeah.
on the posters. The Captain America movie that never came out, also the Captain America shield. The
Sure.
Flash TV series that John Wesley Shipp was in.
Yep.
The commercials for that were the big swirling Flash logo,
Yeah.
and everything was meant to recall this thing, this
Batman.
this blockbuster movie, and it set up a condition where we're just 5 years later, not even 5 years later, and I'm sitting in a theater in St. Louis, see, by that point, I graduated college. I graduated from grad school. I have gone to work for the company that does Comics Buyer's Guide.
Sure.
I'm working with Don and Maggie Thompson, the editors of that magazine, and I'm doing the trade magazine that they do called Comics Retailer. And what they did is they had a distributor trade show. All of us were invited to what was the world premiere of a movie called The Crow. And of course, people know The Crow because it just came out again, but it was based on a James O'Barr comic book that I don't think it ever would have been optioned for a movie if not for Batman.
Right.
It certainly would not have been this wild, spectacular, extremely dark, very violent rock opera without Batman 89.
Yeah.
But it had changed Hollywood the same way that it had changed Star Wars had changed Hollywood in the 70s. It made people think, okay, this kind of a thing could be marketable. This kind of a picture could be made. And, it's not a direct line. Batman backslides when we get into, the 90s on film, because
Sure.
we have had this thing that's happened with Batman Returns, was heavily licensed in places like McDonald's, and it
Yep.
was just a little bit too weird and too violent.
I
And
loved it.
and so it ends up, it's wonderful.
So
But
good.
it ends up that we get the Schumacher pictures instead for the
Sure.
next two. And then Batman has to go away for 7 years,
Right.
or however long it is. And it's not really until you kind of get the trifecta, and they're not in the same year at all, but you get X-Men, Spider-Man, and the sequels of both of those, and you get Batman Begins. And
Right.
now we're back into it, and now this phase is, I think, semi-permanent,
Yeah.
where you can now film anything that you can do in a comic book, and there is nobody that is looking at comics and saying, well, this is a shameful hobby or anything like that,
Right.
or it's all kids stuff or anything. So that's a very long answer to your question,
I love it.
but it does get to why this film is important, both to me and to comics. And my connection to getting into it is basically, I've after having worked for the magazine, and also we ran the card game magazine Scry for Magic the Gathering. I ran that as well. After doing that for about a decade, I ended up starting to write some comics for Marvel. I did Iron Man for a year. That led to me getting Star Wars. I wrote a lot of Star Wars comics, and then Star Wars novels and Star Trek novels, and that brings me to Batman.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Is that what people don't understand is that, especially, you know, you know, like my sister's generation, who, oh man,
Yeah.
who's she's like 7 years younger, and she's grown up in like the Marvel
Yeah.
renaissance that we're like currently in. And it I remember growing up like liking like Ninja Turtles was one of my main
Yeah.
vices, and it was like, and I read the Ninja Turtle comic books and stuff, and
Yeah.
it was just like I didn't have a lot of friends who were also into it.
Yeah.
It was kind of this. It was really a, I hate to use it, but like a counterculture type, passion that we had as young nerds,
Yeah.
and movies like, Batman '89, and then, I think bringing up like the Spider-Man and X-Men movies were like
Yeah.
also a big push
Yeah.
to making it so that it's now more acceptable. And now it's like, now in the public lexicon we have like the Infinity Stones and things like that, which are
And
like,
yeah, people are understanding alternate realities
yeah,
and
the
timelines, and
multiverse sagas.
it's been positive. That's actually a picture I left out of the timeline. There is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because that's, I think, March of '90. And again, when we saw that, that also is a case. I don't think a whole lot of it would have been influenced by Batman in terms of what was on the screen, but certainly
Sure.
the marketing. What are we looking at here? We're looking at a movie based on what had been a comic book that had a print run of 2,000 copies, advertised only in Comics Buyer's Guide just
Yeah.
5 years earlier.
Yeah.
And in the interim, they've had, it's become a big collectible, and they've got a cartoon series,
Of course.
and now they've got people running around beating each other up on screen in costumes. So yeah, I mean, it is. I think it is a watershed moment. Um, it's also a fun movie,
Yeah.
and everybody, people enjoy it. And the fact that it's Tim Burton, and that it's got acting by people who have some serious chops.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Keaton and Basinger, and I think Robert Wool is spectacular. I really have enjoyed bringing his reporter character Alexander Knox back into this. But also Michael Goff, who played Alfred.
Yeah.
Again, a legendary actor, brought into this thing. And I think having also Tim Burton's aesthetic, there's a somberness to everything he does.
Right.
And it really rings out loudest in Batman Returns. And I've mentioned this several times because it's my favorite line about the franchise. Really, is Gene Siskel from Siskel and Ebert. When that movie came out in the newspaper, not on the show, he said that film was a opera about loneliness. And
For sure.
I really buy that, because Batman's broken. Catwoman, Selena Kyle is broken. Penguin is certainly broken.
Right.
And everybody's just trying to, they're working out their problems on this big stage.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And they just happen to be working out their problems with high explosives and
Armies of
and
penguins.
yeah, armies of penguins and other stuff. But that's, I think, and again, I wrote about that again in '89 when I'm writing about it. I said, these are titans. We actually see in that film, the aesthetic is 1940s. It's golden age
Sure.
to a great degree, but Vicky Vale's fashions are modern.
Yeah.
Michael Keaton's fashions are modern. He's got modern technology. Even Alexander Knox, there's people surrounding him with flashbulb cameras, and what's he got? He's got a tape recorder,
Yeah.
a micro cassette recorder, just like I had when I was running around reporting.
Sure.
So anyway, I do think that it's a rich area that has just not been mined before, and that was what was so cool about getting this offer. As mentioned, I've written a lot of stuff in Star Wars. I've written a lot of novels for Star Trek. I did the 40th anniversary graphic novel for Battlestar Galactica. I've
Yeah.
done stuff for Mass Effect, stuff for Halo comics, various other things. Simpsons I've written. Even wrote a Conan story. But when people would always ask, well, what's the one thing you haven't gotten to do that you'd like to do? I never would have even mentioned this,
Yeah.
because who thought that just one corner of a film franchise
Right.
could become a thing?
Sure.
And we had to really get to this point where people could understand that, now all of us in comics, we would have no problem understanding, okay, well, these two movies are part of the same continuum, and
Right.
this over here, and Nolan is his own thing, and you want to call it Earth, whatever the number is, Earth 89 or something like
Yeah.
that, whatever it happens to be. But the general public didn't really start tripping to that until much more recently here. You got a Flash movie where that's all it's about.
Right.
The Flash movie brings back Michael Keaton, and at the same time as Batman, and at the same time, you know, we've got Warner Brothers looking at doing something with this, and this is a consequence of, I would say it really starts back with the Adam West TV show. DC did comics for Batman 66.
Yeah.
And it was its own thing. And I think they did Wonder Woman 77. And I remember pitching at the time to the DC editor, let's do some Batman 89 comics. And he was like, you're like the 40th person who suggested that. And you're like the 40th person in line, probably.
Yeah.
I'm guessing. Well, what happens is, you know, around the time that you know, Batman is resurfacing in the Flash, that's when Sam Hamm, the screenwriter, one of the screenwriters for Batman, and Joe Quinones, the artist, he was actually the he drew several of the covers for my Star Wars series Knight Errant back
cool.
a dozen years ago. They came out with their first miniseries for Batman 89, and they set their stories more than a year after Batman Returns. And what I said is, when they offered me, you know, the chance to play in this sandbox, I said specifically, you know what I want? I'm going to put my stuff in between the two movies.
Okay.
That way, I'm not in their way at all, because they're set well after Batman Returns.
Nice. Yeah, I guess that would kind of like limit your limitations, you know, at least you don't have to worry about, you know, overshadowing someone else's work or trying to make it work cohesively with it. It just,
Well, I wouldn't
you know,
want to
start
repeat
point and an
something.
end point.
I wouldn't want to repeat something they've done.
Yeah,
I
there you go.
mean, obviously, you know, when you're setting out to do something like this, when you do Clayface, or they did Two-Face in their comics already,
Sure.
you know, you're not doing the first Two-Face. You're not doing the first Clayface ever.
That's right.
But because I knew what they had just done with Two-Face, we have Harvey Dent, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to mess with that.
Right.
In
Can't kill
my
him off
story.
in your book.
Yeah, I mean,
Unless he's
because
in the
even though
movie, the
you know,
second
we
movie.
haven't you know, specifically committed to this is going to be, you know, one continuum.
Sure.
I have no desire to you know, overwrite anything if I don't have to.
Very cool. Well, why don't we give everyone like kind of an elevator pitch of the plot without spoiling too much. You did recently announce that Clayface is a major part of this,
That's right.
which is very cool. I think he's a cool character who, you know, talking about like, you know, people having kind of a renaissance. I feel like he's had a pretty good, you know, spotlight shown on him recently in the
Yeah.
Harley Quinn show, which I've really enjoyed. It's like obviously very comical, but like, you know, he's always been a very cool character to me. And now it was pretty cool seeing your take on him, which just feels
Yeah.
very rooted in those Tim Burton Batman. So what's kind of the
Yep.
elevator pitch of the plot for the new book?
Well, one of the things about Batman 89 is it's very much the golden age Batman. So it's very much Batman in the 30s and 40s, where occasionally somebody, you know, dies. It's very rough and tumble.
Sure.
And what I look back on, I said, okay, one of the things I insisted on is I wanted to keep to the aesthetic that we see in the movies, and also the technology level.
Yeah.
One way that when we were watching Batman Forever, which was the third movie, one
Right.
way that we all kind of knew, okay, this is not the Burton style anymore, is when you've got, you know, Riddler reading people's minds, and there's
Right.
neon everywhere and all of that, and it's metahuman stuff. There's no metahuman stuff really in the first two films. There's some, but it's more of a Tim Burton style, grotesque,
Yeah.
you know, freak show kind of stuff that's happening. You know, monster movie stuff that is, you know, you'll see things like, you know, the effects of Smilex gas, or the effects of Smilex. And so what I said is, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the golden age, Clayface, who also has A very similar version just appeared in Caped Crusader, and we thought that was really cool, the cartoon series. And we were sort of like, what I want to do is go back to that version of him that's an actor, but instead of going the Caped Crusader direction, which follows more closely Basil Carlo is the actor's name, him as the washed up actor who's trying to, change his luck, change his fortune. I decided it would be more interesting if he was a more tragic figure right from the outset. And this tied into what I wanted to do anyway, which was, let's write this book as if, what if we could actually write a book that came out, Christmas '89?
Yeah.
What if we could write a book that took place like 6 months later, showing what has happened in the last 6 months, how the world has changed in the last 6 months or
Right.
5 months or whatever. And what if it could be written with full knowledge of what's going to happen in Batman Returns,
Yeah.
which never would have been possible then.
Right.
So I can do a story that shows, the impact of things that happened in Batman on Bruce Wayne, on Alfred, on Vicky Vale. Why did she leave? I can show what happened. What would characters like Max Schreck have thought of the Joker? What would characters like Selena Kyle have thought? If you haven't encountered them, you may soon in the book. It's something where I wanted to show Gotham City grappling with this new normal, that
Yeah.
we have these costume characters running around, and one of the things that I figured would absolutely be left over from the movie is the Joker has just waged not one but two chemical weapons attacks on Gotham City. One, it was an attempt to poison everybody, and then one is in the parade. And I asked myself, well, Batman tells people what not to take, what not to use, what things not to combine, but what is the collateral damage out there? And
Yeah.
can this be something that Bruce Wayne can be trying to fix? And also, can this be something that creates our Clayface?
Right.
And I don't spoil too much from saying we see that pretty darn quick.
Yeah.
uh
For
and
sure.
uh and I wanted to make that just the beginning of what would be a fun mystery that Batman and Alfred together, and also I would say that Commissioner Gordon and Alexander Knox also pitch in, trying to unravel this secret thing that's going on in the course of the book. There's more than one villain. There's and then the Joker specter is everywhere. I mean, the back cover of the book says, funny thing about Jokers, there's two in every deck.
Sure.
And so I had a lot of fun with it, and everybody that we've heard from so far has gotten what we were going for, and the best thing that we're hearing is folks saying that this feels right, that this
Right.
feels like it fits in the Tim Burton universe. It's not going to feel exactly like a movie, or like a movie, because the whole point of doing a novel is to take advantage of the slower moments
Yeah.
and show things you would not normally see in a film. We have fun moments where it's just Alfred and Alfred and Bruce Wayne, talking to one another the night after whatever terrible thing has happened.
Right.
What's a day in the life like out at Wayne Manor? Because he keeps such weird hours, and Alfred has just got to be, employee of the year, because
Oh, for sure. Employee of
he's
the
handling
century.
everything. And so, but that's the sort of thing, I can get into more elaborate storylines. I've sometimes said that these novels, whether it's Batman Resurrection or my Star Wars The Living Force novel, or the one I did just before that, which is Star Trek Strange New Worlds, The High Country.
Hmm.
Um, they would not be movies on their own, but they might be 6 episode TV series.
Little arcs, yeah.
Yeah, they might be something more like that. They might be miniseries. And that's the sort of thing where you can actually visualize. Yeah, you're going to have some scenes where people are not in costume beating each other up.
Right. I
The
think
one,
that's cool though, because I think in basically every Batman movie, you get like maybe like one or two little like Bruce Wayne Alfred scenes, and they have a hard job making sure you understand that entire relationship in those like
yes,
really quick scenes. But one thing
and
they
it's
do
a
have is
it's a testament to them that they actually can carry it out, carry it
absolutely,
across.
absolutely. But I
Yeah,
think that's one thing that's cool about like books like yours, where it's like you can really expand those and really get a little bit more insight to like what Alfred thinks about this whole thing, where
yeah.
it's like his young ward is going out and fighting crime at night and stuff, and it's really cool.
So
Yeah,
one of the things that I really enjoyed, and I was telling Cody, the feeling, it definitely does feel like
Yes,
happening
100%.
inside the universe. But what I really liked is like the public, like how they're dealing with the aftermath of the Joker. It's not even
yeah,
something I would have considered, but it's like, oh man, like this, and if it feels more real world, like yeah, people obviously like they're going to be concerned about the products, right? Like, is it all
yeah,
gone? Is there still some stuff that's out there?
For sure.
Should I worry about what I'm gonna use? And
yeah,
then one of the like the weirdos that are kind of Joker fans, like
Yeah.
I feel like that would happen in real life. Like you would have some
Yeah.
people that are just like hey, I like that weirdo who did that stuff.
Yeah, you
oh,
pointed out the scene where someone's like buying one of the Joker painted,
yes.
pieces of artwork and stuff. And it's like that would totally happen nowadays.
Oh yeah, like for sure. It'd be
It'd
someone
be
with
on
money.
eBay or something, and people would be buying it up like a what's his name?
And oh yeah, well,
Banksy.
Banksy, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's kind of part of the fun of this is, all right, I'm still writing this as if it is set in 1989.
sure.
Even though there's that 40s 80s hybrid going on in
Right.
in the world. Um, you know, you're not. There's no cell phones in this thing.
Right.
There's no. All sorts of things have not happened pop culturally yet, but you do have sort of these little nods to, oh gosh, how 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 would phenomena like that kind of popularity accruing to a serial killer, which is what he is.
Right.
How would people deal with that? I mean, and this is the idea of groupies for dangerous people. That did exist before then. That was
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
quite a bit earlier.
Yeah.
But again, it's one of the things that I found really fun. I tend to like the ground level. How does it work stuff?
Yeah.
The logistics, and Batman does not have a cell phone. None of these people have cell phones,
Right.
and so I Batman's also got to deal with the fact that getting around from place to place. Anybody who's ever tried to go anywhere in New York City or Chicago or anyplace else, knows it doesn't matter how cool your car is.
Right.
If you're in if you're near if you're on the south side of Chicago and you need to get to Wisconsin,
Oh yeah.
which is me all the time because that's where I live. You're not going to actually be able to do that very easily.
Yeah, you can't
Uh,
just turn on the jets on the Batmobile.
yeah, and you have to worry about, well, are people going to know where you're going,
Yeah.
and what if where he happens to be is not where his suit is at the time, or wherever the danger is. And so I have him one of the advantages of this is, whereas in the film things like the Batwing could just miraculously appear.
Right, right.
Yeah, you'd have that. Yeah, you'd have that. The thing in Batman Returns, the Bat ski boat,
Sure, sure.
going in the sewers.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I actually get into why he might want one, and
Right,
I get into him thinking about, should I just start storing Batmobiles all around town?
right.
What should I do? And again, it's not a huge part of it, but it's a fun part of it, I think, and it lets you feel like you're in the world,
Right.
and sort of wallowing in it.
And I think that's what's so cool too about looking at a story in prose versus in like film, because in film you gotta cut the filmmakers a break every once in a while and realize that like, okay, he needs to have a flying bat vehicle. Let's just have
Yeah,
it show up. He has a remote control or something. But in this, it's cool. You get to, if that happens and he's just like he walks
yeah,
around a corner and the bat wing's waiting there for him, it feels like it's cheapened. So it's fun showing that you put some thought into how you
and
would go about these things and stuff. And it
let's
like
let's also keep in mind all the things that he shows up with, like the Batwing and then the ski boat or whatever. They all get destroyed.
yeah,
So he's got to deal with that.
yeah. Gotta call the
And
insurance company and be like, all right.
so he's got to deal with that. And also what I wanted to do is I wanted to show him actually trying out some technologies that don't work.
Yeah, we see
And
that very early
you
in the book, which is really cool.
very early with the Batarang
Yeah. He was like, oh, it only hit 3 of the 5 people. I guess,
and
that's
I
not
now
that
I
bad.
gotta go. Now I gotta go get the thing,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
maybe I can't leave that out there. That's a design flaw.
Right.
But and in fact, as somebody walking off with a Batarang is part, or the dog running off with a Batarang it ends up being a problem for him in the next picture. He's got a vehicle that will debut in this book that he quickly realizes, yeah, this ain't gonna work.
Sure.
So I had a lot of fun with it.
That's awesome. Well, it's at least what I've read for it, and Christian's much further than I am, but it feels like Batman 89 or Returns. I kind of use
Yep,
those ones
it's all the same.
interchangeably. It feels like the same world, and it's cool because like the version of Clayface we're seeing is someone who feels like they're part of that world. It's not like
Yeah,
you took someone else from the Nolan movies or
yeah.
the Joss Whedon, Justice League or whatever, and dropped it in here. It feels very rooted in it, and so it's been a lot of fun so far.
And very much a tragic figure in the Burton tradition, and also in the Burton tradition, you don't know how he's going to end up.
Right.
And
Exactly.
that is another hallmark of these films. When the Joker meets his end, in the first movie, in that theater, everybody gasped. They couldn't believe they'd let that happen.
Hmm.
In Batman Returns, when Bruce Wayne, or rather Batman, pulls off his cowl or rips it off, and reveals who he is to Catwoman and also to Max Schreck. There was a moment, I'm watching it the first time. There was a moment where I'm going, wait a minute, oh my God, are they really going to let him resolve the arc?
Yeah.
Are they really going to let him? And I believe for a second, yeah. I mean, maybe. That's good filmmaking.
Yeah. It's good storytelling. I think it keeps that suspense in there. So you never know. It's always a bummer when you like, oh, I figured it
Yeah.
out like halfway through, and now you're just doing it for the
So
completion. But
when you see Max Schreck and in my book, he's going to make it to Batman Returns.
yeah,
Not
exactly.
necessarily anybody else.
That's true. That's true. Very cool. Christian, you have any last minute question for him?
It's not so much a question, but I want to say thank you for bringing back Lawrence. I enjoyed Lawrence very much. He was just he was just like kind of like this cool character who has like a small little part, like
There's
in
no lines.
yeah, no lines, but it was kind of cool seeing him get fleshed out and like what he was doing, after.
Well, that's again great filmmaking. They made him iconic without him ever saying anything.
Yeah.
We realize that he's the mouthpiece, for the Joker in terms of he's the guy that brings the music. He's the
Yeah.
guy that does that. And he's cut off, and he has nobody to do that for. And a lot of the question about this book in the first part is who's going to take that over? Who's going to who's going to be the person who tells Lawrence to turn on the boombox? And again, yeah, I will say one reason as well that I used him is that he survived.
Yeah.
Sure. Made it
the
out.
Yeah, I mean, I did have to, even though I saw the film a dozen times, I did have to go through and frame through the final scene in the cathedral to make absolutely sure that he made it out.
Right. Right.
It's like, yeah, he goes through the floor, but there's probably another floor underneath.
Yeah, exactly.
And like when I was like Lawrence, I was like, that sounds like the mustache guy. So I was like, is it him? And I actually had to go look at it. I was like, oh, it is him. Like that's kind of cool, man. Like,
oh yeah,
made it
yeah.
through.
He's one word name. He's that famous.
There you go. All right, I got a couple like rapid fire.
Okay.
I call these selfish questions. These
Sure.
are not necessarily questions that pertain to the book, but there's stuff that I want to know when I'm talking to a fan
Gotcha.
of some sort of thing. And maybe Christian might jump in and have a couple too. Now we'll leave Michael Keaton out of it just because I think you
You're
might
gonna
have
take my question.
a slight bias. But on screen,
Yeah.
and who's your favorite Batman other than Michael Keaton?
Oh, I definitely think in the Nolan pictures. So we're talking about what's his name there.
Christian Bale does a pretty solid job, but
Yeah, and
I have a soft spot for Ben Affleck, and it's not that those movies were the best, but
yeah.
I loved his Batman and his Bruce Wayne so much, and I feel like he doesn't get enough credit because
My favorite of the Nolan movies will surprise a lot of folks. This is something I haven't actually been asked before. Even though I understand and know that The Dark Knight is the best of the three,
sure,
you can't stop me from watching Dark Knight Rises when it comes on,
okay,
because it is very much like a story like this, where it's a sprawling epic
yes,
showing everything that happens to a city over the course of many, many days.
yeah,
And I'm interested in that. It actually takes time to explore some of those beats, and the cost is it makes the movie 3 hours long,
of course,
but it explores those moments. One of the things that I don't know if it's a missed opportunity, but one of the things that I wish that had happened with the MCU and the whole Thanos thing is we have this snap, and we have 5 years that went by,
sure,
and then we sort of pick things up afterward, and there's some references to it,
but
and
they're small, they're little
there's not
scenes,
you could do a whole just 5 years of TV shows just about that.
right?
I mean,
And I
it's
think,
obviously the most traumatic thing that has
yeah,
ever happened to anybody, and it's not going to be something people are going to get over 5 days later.
I think that would have been a cool thing too. I know they have there was a comic series that kind of
Yeah.
dealt with some of that. It's called like Frontline or
Mm.
something like that.
Well, and
Um,
I liked in Falcon and Winter Soldier, where they have him dealing with a bank
right,
just over the nonsense that would have taken place.
right, right,
You know,
right.
the legal stuff.
I think that would have been a cool show to do. That would have been like a lower budget, so they
Yeah,
could
and
make a few more episodes or whatever.
it wouldn't
But
be very
also, like,
bouncy.
yeah, and it would tell cool stories, I think. You could have, I don't know, somebody like Anthony Mackie walk in and do a little scene, but you don't have to like suit him up and CGI him and stuff. And I think it would have told some cool stories.
I think that
Yeah.
was an idea we explored when we had Joffrey Cantor on. He was the reporter in Daredevil, so we had him on the show, and it was
Mm.
like, dude, how cool would it have been to have a reporter like doing like
Yes.
reporting on like what is going on and like all the in between stuff, finding this tech that's around
Yeah.
from like
It's
the
just
first Avengers.
it's just almost too big of an idea
Yeah.
Yeah.
to not, and again, I admire them for swinging for the fences
Yeah,
and doing what they did. But yeah, I do enjoy a lot of the moments in that movie just because it does feel like this is a year in the life of the city.
I
absolutely. I
will
think,
say Marvel listens to the podcast and steals a lot of
oh,
our
for
ideas.
sure.
So I wouldn't be surprised, if they heard us now and
Yeah,
then
a
they're
year
like,
from
oh,
now, Comic-Con, they're going to announce the one where it's like, oh, it's
No,
the
that's
man on
okay.
the street, and it's, during the snap, and yeah, they'll know they stole
Yeah,
that idea from us. My,
that's okay.
from all three of us when we were talking
yeah,
about
yeah,
it.
we'll share credits on this one for sure. But we
That's
cast
okay.
Blade before he got announced. We set the Fantastic Four in the '60s like 3 years ago. Like, there's all sorts of stuff.
Well,
Anyway,
I had a couple of Iron Man characters that I wrote for the comics turn up in the movies, so
okay,
I feel good
exactly. There you
about
go.
those little moments.
My last selfish question, I think, would be discounting movies and just looking at Batman and his whole pantheon of villains. Like he's got one of the best rogues galleries, and
Oh
I
yeah.
think one of the most widely known too. Who's your favorite of the villains that he's had, whether it's comic, show, movies, what have you?
And I'll add to that question. One that we haven't seen on screen that you would love to see on
Ooh,
screen.
that's another good one.
Well, that's something I don't want to necessarily. There are things that you haven't seen on screen you might see on page,
Ooh, okay,
and so
that's cool. I guess
I'm
you have a cool opportunity to kind of make that
yeah, I'm
happen.
not. I won't go too much further into that. I do like some of the smaller characters that I wouldn't necessarily put into a Batman '89 thing because it's set too
Sure.
early, or rather the aesthetic is bringing in Golden Age
Right.
and Silver Age, characters. When I was reading comics in college, we had the KG Beast. I mean, we had we
Yeah.
had
I remember
there
that one.
was there was a great Batman annual. I think it was called The Player on the Other Side or something like that, where it was it envisioned that there was another millionaire that was basically doing the opposite of the he
Right,
was
a
he
nice
was he
foil
was he
for
was
Bruce Wayne.
yeah, and this is many years before Hush.
Oh, sure.
So yeah, I'll just say, yeah, I've been spending a lot of time thinking about some different corners of the Rogues Gallery, and and again, depending on when this is released, maybe people will know that I have more opportunities, or maybe they won't.
Very, very cool. Christian, how about you? What's one that you haven't seen that you'd really like to see on screen? And I'll share mine afterwards.
Batman villains?
Yeah, Batman villains, I think,
Ooh.
or like even a Batman character. We can expand it to not just villains. Because there's been some good. I mean, there's been some good ones, and there's been some like good villains done poorly, I think too.
I don't know. I see. Like I like the Scarecrow. I would have liked to seen a kind of more like lankier version. Although,
Sure, sure. A more like the animated series style
yeah,
one.
yeah, like
Yeah.
creepier looking.
I really like, and I know this is kind of a newer one in the scheme of things with Batman, but the Court of Owls stuff
Oh
storyline
yeah.
has always been a really cool. I love that like secret society type deal, and you
Hmm.
never know like who's in it and who's around and that sort of thing. They're not a maniacal supervillain necessarily, but I always really like those stories for sure. All right. Well, thanks so much for spending the time. I know it's late in your neck of the woods, so we'll let you get going. But um, yeah, everyone should check out Batman Resurrection, and it's out October
October
15th.
15th.
October 15th. So hopefully,
October 15th, an audiobook, hardcover, and ebook. It's going to be on sale everywhere. And our release event is the day of in Appleton, Wisconsin, at the Barnes and Noble. There, I go immediately to New York Comic Con,
I
where
was going to
I'm
ask, yeah.
table one in the writers block. So I'm there signing all weekend. And then I have the following weekend, Halloween weekend, I have my first Chicago tour. bookstores. So I'm in several different Barnes and Nobles
That's a
there.
good time of year
And
for the Batman
oh yeah,
tour
oh
too.
yeah, it's we're doing costume contests and various
There you
other
go.
things. So and people can find out more about this stuff. Social media on Twitter, I'm JJM Faraway, and then on Threads, Instagram, and Facebook, I am John Jackson Miller, one word. And then my website, where I have notes on almost all of my novels and comics that I've written. That is farawaypress.com.
Very, very cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and talk a little bit about this book. It's very exciting. Also, I will have mentioned that after doing a little research on you, I'm definitely going to read that Star Wars Kenobi story. That sounds really right up my
Thank you,
alley.
thank you. Yeah,
I
that's
love
the
that.
cover back there behind the guy.
Yeah, yeah. I've been looking at it this whole time. I'm going to pick that one up for sure because
Yeah,
I
you'll
love
enjoy
Star
it.
Trek too. You basically dabble in all the stuff that I love. So you know you're welcome for the
Well,
future sales. They're coming.
Yeah, I
well,
actually I didn't know about magic, and I was like, oh man, there were so many magic questions we could have asked.
oh yeah, magic, yeah, the scry magic, yeah. I did a good podcast about that era. There's a channel called CCG History, and if you go back and
Okay.
look at John Jackson Miller talks about scry, that's me talking all about Magic's debut in '93, and then me writing magazines and books about it later on.
So
But
cool.
yeah, it is fun to do all these things. Thanks for having me here, and may the Bat Force live long and prosper.
There we go. And thanks again for everyone listening, liking and subscribing. Make sure to check out the book. And Christian, also thanks for being the Robin to my Batman, the Alfred to my Batman. I guess there's no Robin in '89
Yeah,
in Tim Burton ones.
I'll take Alfred. Alfred's pretty cool.
Alfred
There,
is
there,
pretty.
there is a Robin in the comics
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true. That's true. Oh, and
in
then
the Bat
12.
'89 comics.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder who we would cast as Robin in the '89 comics. Put that down in the comments. Who you would have cast in a Tim Burton era Batman as Robin? Maybe a
I,
Michael J. Fox. I think that would be pretty cool. But anyway, to all the nerds out there, remember you're not alone. You're with friends. This is Nerds with Friends. Thank you and good night.